All right, all right. Today we have another Ambassador for Peace podcast. Today I am honored um, that we have an incredible person, Leland how do you pronounce your name? Leland Holgate?
Oh, yep, you got it.
Okay, so I'm going to start over again. Holgate, right?
Yeah, yeah,
All right, all right. Today I'm going to start over.
yeah.
Hello, everyone. Today we have another incredible Ambassador for Peace podcast. I'm honored to have Leland Holgate with us today. Holland, thank you. Leland, thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm honored. For some reason, I think it was about a month ago, I came across to one of your breathwork session that you're providing for people online that can connect. And it was for peace. It was for world peace. And anybody who does anything related to world peace, I get gravitated. And I said, I need to connect breathwork for world peace. That sounds fascinating. And I would love to um, discuss more about it, what you do. But when I took that session, it was so uplifting. It was so high vibe. And then after that session, all that deep breathing that was done, I was feeling so blissful and feeling the peace and the energy and that was radiating. And I knew I needed to connect with you and I need to share your story to my community. Would you mind share? You have a very interesting story. If I recall, you're a veteran. You have experienced war, and that's exactly why I was more excited to connect and learn about you. Please share about your background.
Yeah, yeah, my pleasure. Born and raised in Vicenza, Italy. My father was a Army Ranger, so he was part of the elite, Army Special Forces. And I grew up in Italy till 8, moved to Florida, where I'm currently now, and grew up as a kid and through teenage years. And at about the age of 17, I got tired of being told what to do, so I joined the military. Thought that was the best decision to make, of course, at that point in time. Wow, did I have a surprise in store for me. Because dad was Army and he was one of the combat troops, he forbid me to join the Army or the Marines. And when he found out that I joined the Air Force, he was really happy about that. Well, when I joined, I scored very high on the ASVAB, so I got to pick my job, and I picked an air crew spot called C-130 Loadmaster. And this job is filled with not just loading the aircraft and doing the weight and balance, but also doing troop drops, paratroop drops, in battle drops for, what we call CDL drops for our troops, for ammunition, for food, also for refugees as well. So when he found that out, he wasn't exactly too happy. He thought, oh, great. My son went to the Air Force. At least he's safe. He won't be anywhere near the battlefield. But after my training, I actually was stationed with the most deployed squadron in the United States military. So I went through SEER training, which is called Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape. Also POW training, if you've seen the movies, G.I. Jane, all these other things. I went through all of that. Also earned my expert marksman. So I was primed to be one of the top troops. As I continued doing what I was doing, I started dropping Rangers, so I started dropping the Army paratroopers. I started meeting with some of the pararescue and combat control guys in the Air Force, and that's our special forces side. And I got hooked. So I had already been through survival and POW training, and I got my expert marksman, and I thought, I'm going to go be one of these combat troops. I'm going to give this a try. I think I can make this. And we went to our deployment in Kosovo. We did get stationed there during the Kosovo War, and we were tasked with protecting the 500,000 refugees that had been displaced by the then Yugoslavian army, now Serbia. Um, and so it was an interesting place to be. I mean, you're not there to pick a side. Yeah, of course, we're there to stop the bad guy. But from my perspective, we were humanitarians sent in because 500,000 people lost their homes. Their villages are getting shelled for no reason other than having a different religion and calling God a different name. And that's what kind of woke me up at that point in time. And I realized I could do more if I were on that combat side. I could do more if I could be a pararescue troop to go in and rescue our guys that are downed inside of combat, or one of the combat control guys that help sets up, all of these airdrops, close air support missions, all kinds of good stuff. So I had pretty much figured out when I got back, I was going to tell my first sergeant, it's time to go. I want to do my hell week. I want to put in my all, and I want to go be one of the pararescuemen. So we come back, and after you come back, you get some time off, of course, right? I mean, on the way out of this, the last mission, we were 17 miles over the enemy border, which was then Albania, because they had already invaded through what is now Kosovo and into the northern side of Albania. So we were 17 miles over the border, bringing in support, also cluster bombs for our A-10s, more troops to come in. And on our way out, we got lit up by what's called SAM site, surface to air missile. So we're exiting the combat arena, and as we're leaving, bells and whistles are going off. And whenever that happens, we start just yanking and banking all over the place, up and down, left and right. It's like a 12 Richter scale earthquake. So of course, everybody's freaking out. I'm freaking out. Alarms are going off. We're turning in, because this will freak you out a little bit. You have to turn in to the missile. You don't turn away from it and try to run. You turn into it because your wings cover up the heat bloom of your plane. So of course, we're turning into where we think this thing is, and I'm popping out what's called chaff and flare in the back. If you've ever seen those C-130 cargo jets and they release all that chaff and flare, that's what we were doing. I was like, oh my God. There's literally, if we were hit or fired upon at that point in time, we probably had a 3% chance of survival. There was no way for us to get away. We're a big cargo jet just now climbing out of the area. We didn't have any speed, so we were screwed. And that went on for about 8 to 10 minutes. And everybody's looking to me for answers. I'm in the back window just looking for this missile that we think is on its way. And thankfully, all they had done is painted us, which means they locked on. And then that, of course, sends all the signals to the aircraft. Oh my God, you guys are locked on. You should evade, take some evasive maneuvers. Thankfully, they didn't fire. But you can imagine in that 8 to 10 minutes, the absolute hell and sheer terror that we all experienced. Like, I thought my life was over. There was nothing that we could have done. There's no dropping down to the ground and shooting back. You're just sitting there hoping and praying. So of course, we had some steam to blow off. And we come back, and because of our job, we can't just go ride a scooter or take a walk in the park. We have to go do something high rev, something to get the haunches on the back of the neck up, high adrenaline junkie type stuff. So we get a fast watercraft, and we get an inner tube, and we thought it'd be a really good idea to go really, really fast on the water and get pulled behind the inner tube, because that's hilarious. You're bouncing up and down, and it's like the bounces become less and less as you go faster. And one of these times was my turn, and the craft went left, and it just slungshot me off of this thing. And all I remember seeing is the water and then black, and I was gone. And in that moment, everybody on the shore said I looked like a folding chair, just bouncing and folding over, the water, skipping like a stone. And in that moment, it had snapped my neck at C1 and C2, shut everything off, and I was dead for just about 3 minutes. So they had to pull me onto the shore. My buddy wears me like a belt. He's driving a wave runner, and he just wears me like a belt and starts, burning hell towards the shore. Thankfully, on the shore, there was already a state trooper sitting in the park, like doing his rounds and checking. So he ran down to the edge of the lake shore and immediately pulled me up, started resuscitating me. And I remembered this whole experience. And I freaked my friends out because I told them like in detail what happened. And they're like, what the hell? How did you know any of that? And I just told them. I sat there and I watched the whole thing happen. There were no thoughts or wants or needs or concerns. There was just isness. It was quiet silence. No, it was like just being, there was nothing whatsoever. So I'm watching him do this, and he jabs his fist into my ribs, and he starts doing this xylophone action. And that's how he brought me back. He got my heart started, got me breathing again. And I didn't really wake up until they had me into the ambulance. But when I wake up and come to in the ambulance, I come slamming down into my body after this amazing, peaceful experience. You know, the most peace I've ever felt in my life. It felt like I had come home. You know, that feeling when you come home and you're everything is just calm. So moving forward, extreme contrast, slamming down into my body. I come to, and I hear this EMS, the EMT, the paramedic asking me, "Do you feel that?" And after a while, I'm like, "Dude, what are you talking about?" And he says, "Oh no." And of course, that's the last thing you want to hear from your medical professional that's sitting inside the ambulance with you. "Oh no." What do you mean, "Oh no"? And I've got this horse collar on my neck. I'm 19 years old. So, I mean, I'm fresh and young. I've got my life ahead of me. And there's this pain on the back of my head. And then I tuned into the fact that, holy shit, I can't feel anything from my neck down. There's nothing going on. I can't move my hands. And then he proceeds to tell me that he's been pricking me with a hypodermic needle all over my legs, my side, my back, my stomach, and there's no response. There's no reflex from the body. There's no pain sensation or sensory information reaching my brain. And that's when the sheer terror, like leaving that combat area, entered my life again. Because at that moment, I recognized, oh my God, I'm paralyzed from the Adam's apple down. I can't feel anything. I don't know what's happening. So we get to the hospital and they do the scans. And when the doctor comes back in, he just has one of those looks where he won't look you in the eye. And I knew it was nothing I wanted to hear. And when he came back in, told me that the MRI had revealed that I had about a silver dollar size contusion or bruise wrapped around my spinal column, right at C1 and C2, where the vertebra impacted the spinal column, which is why the body shut everything down. It's like a defense mechanism. You know, it doesn't want you moving anything after the spinal column has been injured. So everything shut down. And of course, his face is just really sunken and low as he explains to this 19-year-old kid, there's no healing spinal tissue. There's no coming back from this. I'm sorry to tell you. This is 1999. We didn't know what we know now. And that was the darkest night of my soul that I've ever experienced in my life. Anything that I experienced in combat, when I experienced inside of the war arena, none of that had anything compared to what it felt like to be told that you'll never know how to move your arm again. You'll never know what it's like to feed yourself with your own hand. You'll never know what it's like to feel grass in between your toes. So it just vacuumed every bit of hope and life out of me completely. And you can imagine I fell into probably one of the darkest nights of my soul, like I said, where it was just, I was asking friends to kill me. I didn't want to be there. I was done. I was finished. There's no way I could finish my life off after all the amazing things I just did, learning how to jump out of airplanes, throwing things out of aircraft in air, throwing people out of aircraft in air, you know, traveling the world. I got to see 63 different countries in 3 years of service. It was absolutely crazy as a young kid. I had all of that ahead of me and it had just been taken away. So of course, a lot of self-loathing over, you know, a 2-day period. And I don't know what happened, but on the third day, all that training that they hit you with, you know, 3 strikes and you're not out. There's always one more thing that you can do. Never give up. We're always looking for you. Never surrender. Always evade. Always try to escape. We're coming for you. You're not forgotten. All these things started hitting me. And then when the doctor again comes in on the third day to do his, you know, this is what we have to expect in your life, I just screamed at the top of my lungs, no. There was an expletive in there, but it was no. This is not going to be my life. And immediately my brachial plexus, which is this cluster of nerves in your shoulder here, just lit up. And I got this energy that just ran right up my neck. And the moment that happened, it kind of gave me this pause. My eyes opened wide and I just looked at him and I was like, "Doc, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I need you to just get the hell out of my room and send my friends in. There's something happening right now. You told me something was impossible. I'm experiencing something different in this moment right now. Please just leave. Let me take care of this from this point forward." And from there, it was like everything shifted. This hopeless moment, which is typical about life when you think about it, right? You're presented with a hopeless looking moment. And then finally a solution or some sort of light is shed on that. And you recognize it's okay. Just sink into the now. Stop worrying about what could have been, what should have done. what you didn't want to happen, all these other things. And the next day, because I really fed into that energy, the physical therapist that they gave me was a yogi. So he walks in and he starts talking about doing yoga and practicing breath work, which is what 90 to 95% of yoga is pranayama. And of course, I'm 19, I'm paralyzed. I'm looking at him like, dude, if I could move my legs, I'd kick you in the throat right now. Yoga. I'm talking about yoga. And then that's when he imparted on me like, whoa, it's all right. 95% of what yoga is just the controlling of your breath. It's called pranayama. I'm going to take you through a couple of techniques. I want to see how you respond to this.
But I'm gonna hold you off for pause you for a bit. There was so much.
Yeah, that's a lot to open up. I know.
Yes. I will. I think this is a perfect time to. I want to get a little bit more backward again. Back in the 90s, being in militaries and then being in the war, Bosnia Kosovo war. I remember those when I was a kid in Sweden. I remember so many Bosnian came, and you went there with just innocence, being in service, and all this happened. I want to get back to that 3 minutes that you had that afterlife experience when that happened. Would you like to? Can I get a little bit more touch into that before we start talking about how healed you are? Just fascinating.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, it's that is obviously the crowning moment of my life. You have never experienced, unless you've been through that. If you're watching this and you've been through it, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because it is the most peaceful and liberating experience of your life. I no longer fear death. I don't search for it. I'm not looking for it, of course, but I no longer fear it anymore. I know from that point forward, when it's time for me to go in old age and I've lived a life, I am going to welcome death as a friend, because it's just a transition into a way of being that is the most peaceful and loving thing I've ever felt in my life. It was like being wrapped in joy and love and understanding and compassion, but having none of the worry or concern or wonder about, anything. You just know it all. You're in this space of that unified field where you're just everything and nothing all at once. And it's the most liberating and freeing and beautiful experience I've ever had. And when I say it felt like coming home, it literally felt like that. We can all think of those moments where maybe we've taken a vacation, or if you're in the military, you were deployed, or you were away from home for an extended period of time. And you know that feeling when you walk in the door, drop your bags, kick your shoes off, hit your couch or favorite chair, and just go, that is the best way to describe the way that felt. It was just like the whole experience of this human nature and 3D being dripped away and was like, that feels better. I'm me again.
So have you that near-death experience being in such an incredible space? Were you seeing, or was it more so feeling, or was it both? Or
it was both. It was both. I could see, but I wasn't really concerned about what I was looking at. It was just there. I was viewing myself, viewing the man over me as he's reviving me. I could see the people in the crowd, but I'm just this centered focus on the moment. Like you're watching a movie, essentially, but I'm there standing over it like a hologram. It's the only way I could describe that. And it was epic. I mean, you feel all of that isness. It's the only way I can describe it. It's beyond peace and joy and love and authenticity. It's beyond any physical experience you can even try to contemplate. It's just freedom. Pure freedom is what it was an experience of. And then, of course, visually, everything, I can see everything going on, but there's no interaction. I'm just viewing it like a movie.
Now, I've done a lot of meditation, and you teach meditation and breath work, and I had those incredible blissful states that just like in such as ecstasy. I don't know how to explain it, spiritual ecstasy.
Yeah.
Is that, have you in physical war experienced similar to when you had that near? Or is it different, or is it more than that, or can you explain that?
Yeah, it's very, very similar. There are some, of course, slight differences that I can tune into when I do the breath work, but it is like you're 99% where I'm describing in that afterlife experience, that's what you're feeling in the breath work, which is why it's been called the welcome home method. The breath work that I've created, the technique, is called the welcome home method for that specific reason. Because the moment that you do it, and I entered that moment with Phil in the hospital when he took me through, I was like, holy crap, there it is again. Holy shit. It was only 3 days ago, when I had that afterlife experience. So when he gave me that first breath experience, I was like, oh my God, that's the physical representation of what I was feeling.
Wow.
There's some slight, like I said, very minute differences, but 99% match
So
to
you
that
can
experience.
experience those emotions and that state right here in this physical world
Yes.
with these spiritual exercises.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
On command when you want.
Wonderful. So let's go back forward again to that meeting with the yogist that was introducing you with the breath work.
Yeah. Yeah. So of course, here's the cool part, right? Think about it. In 1999, not only were we are now with neuroscience and psychology, right? Both of which I'm earning my double doctorate in. But we had no idea about neuroplasticity at the level we do, being able to heal and regenerate these things. So, of course, in 1999, you could also imagine the smallest possibility that I would get the one male physical therapist in the military that was also a yogi. Like the possibility of that back in that day and age, it completely minute, very small.
What accident, huh? What a
Yeah,
coincidence.
yeah, exactly.
Fascinating.
Exactly. Yeah, it's so amazing when you look at it. It's like I'm so convinced the further I go in age, there's no such thing as coincidence. This is all
Yes.
providence. It all happens perfectly. And to that point, in walks, I believe his name was Phil. Here's the thing about this is I was 19. I was so into just healing that when I grew and I continued through some of these other experiences, not to mention the drugs and alcohol, destroying certain memories, I can't remember his name, but I swear to God, it's Phil. And when he walked in and he gave me that one little, for one, when he told me those things and I had that little ego moment when I was like, what are you talking about, dude? That's the stupidest crap I've ever heard. In that moment, the way that he talked with me, the way that he handled me was so gentle. And so I understand where you're coming from completely, that I just sunk right in. It was like somebody, like a comedian walks in the room and just cuts the tension with a knife. And now all of a sudden everybody relaxes and you can get into it. And that's what it felt like with him. He had this capability to make you sink in and just be here in the moment. Don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about expectations or what's going to happen as we continue this work. Just experience it, enjoy it. And when we did that first breath practice, like I said, I was hooked. I dug in like a tick after that moment. You can imagine I was a breath crackhead from that point forward. You couldn't stop me from practicing breath. In fact, it's funny enough, there were moments in the hospital that code blue would go on through the hospital. The alert would go off and I'd have a nurse or a doctor standing over me, like double checking everything. And of course I'm coming out of this like breath work and I'm like, dude, scare the crap out of them. And they're like, oh, he's okay. And I'm like, yeah, I was feeling great. You just totally ruined that moment. So they got it after a while that room 18 or whatever his room is, just leave him alone. I promise he's fine. He's in there breathing.
Yes, that's amazing.
Yeah. So from there, man, he inspired me so much, and working with him was so easy that within 2.5 weeks, I was doing like 5 to 8 hours of breath a day. I'm stuck in a bed. What else am I going to do? I'm not going to be scrolling through anything. I can't even use my hands. So I was just breathing. That was it. As long as I had time in the day, I was breathing and resting and breathing and resting and meditating and breathing and resting and breathing. And it was just constant, always. And within 2.5 weeks, I got about 60% of the sensation back in my body, like almost down to my waist and like belly button area.
Wow.
In just those 2.5 weeks. It was mind numbing because every time I did a breath practice, those little, that little whoop that happened when the doctor was in the room continued to happen, except it would move into my shoulders and then it would move into my chest and then it would move into my stomach. And it started getting to the point where after about 2 months, I was starting to experience pain in lower regions. Couldn't really move things too well, but that's a good sign. I'd be breathing and I'm like, oh God, that hurts. Oh God, that hurts. Like, this is great. And then in that way, I started celebrating pain, and I kept on going in and going in, like, okay, the more this hurts, the more I'm waking things up, the more I'm getting pieces of myself back. And science at this point can't describe it. So I'm just going to keep doing what Phil has taught me. I'm going to keep on doing what I have set in and dedicated and set as my intention. And within 2 years, I was able to limp away. I had a cane for occasional moments when I had back pain or neuropathy, which is that numbness, tingling, and pain that you get throughout your nerves. But yeah, within 2 years, I got myself back up and walking again.
Fascinating. Just with these breath work and just focusing on this meditative state of being in the present moment.
Yeah.
Did you have any other guide or any other people, or were you just intuitively just guided yourself?
Yeah, it was just my physical therapist and then me. So of course I'd meet with him 30 minutes to 45 minutes each day. We'd do stretches. And of course the stretching part of it helped as we were moving, because I had nurses and friends moving arms and stretching things to keep the atrophy, how muscles shrink, to keep that from happening too much, keeping that at a minimum. So yeah, that was it. It was just me. Once I found that, it was just revolving what I wanted to experience, what I was experiencing. And that's what I've learned and continue to learn in neuroscience and psychology is it's okay to experience what you're experiencing, feel the way you're feeling about what you're experiencing, because that gives you the choice to now pick something different. And that's what I did. I just picked a different life. It was that easy. And I know it sounds simplistic, but it really is that easy. What do you want? Choose it. Go.
Would any type of imagination or seeing yourself, feeling yourself that you're all healed, did you do any of those at the same time? Or
every day, all day, every day, all day, all I did was saw myself walking again. I felt the desire fulfilled over and over and over again, just feeling it and it was easy because I was getting the little pieces for myself, right? Now, one might think, oh, that's nothing. I want my arm back. Me, I was celebrating the smallest win. If I didn't feel my nipple on the left-hand side, and then all of a sudden after a breath practice, just got a little bit of a touch of sensation in that area, I was celebrating that like I had just won $1 million. So in that way, it was easy for me to build.
That is the secret to manifestations. Anything, feeling, seeing, breathing, and every step of the way being in gratitude state, celebration state, and ultimately everything just prevailed to you. Just fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things, and that, same thing, just like you said, I could easily have slipped in. And there were some moments where I would, fall into those very normal breath patterns of, oh, this isn't going to work. I can't believe this isn't happening faster. And then I would just come right back to that gratitude for what I had found earlier in that day, and everything else would wash away, and I'd find more, and then I'd find more. So it's, just like you said, to your point, the more you choose to experience something new, you're writing the program in this moment that you're experiencing tomorrow, instead of experiencing the guilt, shame, regret, and everything else from the day before or even the day of. I could have easily fed into that, how I was feeling earlier. I couldn't even use the bathroom on my own. I've got a colostomy bag in. I could focus on that, or I could focus on, ooh, I got my shoulders yesterday. I'm going to get my chest today. I'm going to get my abdomen tomorrow. And say I just got a buzz going through my body because it somatically remembers. It was just, that's how I'd programmed myself. It was exciting and exciting and exciting and exciting. And I just never let up on that gas pedal. I'm just constantly focused on my future already being here.
That's fascinating. Well, I do have a set of questions. We are ambassador for peace, but I'd love to learn more. So, but 99, another 2 years forward, you're fully healed after that tragic accident, seeing war, close, and then having a near-death experience. And since that was probably in 2002 or 2003 that you were fully back to normal physically, and what happened from there to now today?
Yeah. So, right about the beginning of 2002, I got up and limped away at least at the end of 2001, but really, really beginning of 2002 is when I was able to actually start doing normal things again, driving, going to work, all these other things. What I had noticed is that I had taken care of the physical component. I had found at least the mental component of drive and will and choice. However, I had not found the spiritual component just yet. So, of course, what I had to deal with now that I had the physical body back was all of the trauma from my childhood and all the trauma from the war that I had not had time to process yet, because over the 2 years, I didn't let myself. I would repress that. I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to imagine that. I already at that point in time would start falling asleep, and I would wake up with night terrors. I would wake up screaming at the top of my lungs, my roommates freaking out. I would wake up just in fear. So there were things I hadn't dealt with yet. And of course, the way of the VA is medication. And that's when I started down a long and arduous path of becoming the zombie that the Veterans Administration turned me into. 13 different medications, antipsychotics, antidepressants, benzos, sleep medications, wakeful medications. It was ridiculous. The approach. This is also why I'm becoming a doctor now, is because I noticed that a doctor has the ability to vacuum hope out of the room. That doctor that walked in that said, "Ooh, you're screwed. Sorry." And then also the doctor has the power to either set you on a healing route or to set you on a declining trajectory by just focusing on your symptoms and throwing massive amounts of drugs at that. And that's what I went through. So for 10 years, I was just a zombie. At a certain point, medications don't do it. They have to step it up to stronger medications. Then eventually those don't work. And then eventually, once they cut you off because you've reached your max or you can't have that many in the month, you move to street drugs. It's the most logical choice. Like, okay, cool. You're not going to give me my fix. You're not going to let me numb my pain. I got it. Don't worry about it. And that's when I found myself drinking, massive alcoholic, even just to start my day, and taking uppers to get through the day, taking antipsychotics to handle those moments of absolute sheer terror that would just set in a moment's notice, sleep medications, antidepressants so that I could actually chill and eat. And it was just a constant cycle. And after a while, I just found my soul completely vacuumed out of my body. I was null and void. I was at a certain point toward the end of it, shooting up heroin and smoking the meth pipe. Anything I could do to get past and not deal with what I had experienced in my childhood, experienced in war, especially everything post that, and breaking my neck, losing my dream of becoming special forces, dealing with all of that. And thankfully, of course, there's always that one friend that has compassion and understanding for you. And they pulled me in, and again, I connected with my breath practice because that one friend gave me the chance. And in that moment, went on a 6-week detox, no methadone, no anything, which is not suggested. I do not tell anybody and would not suggest that as a medical professional to do that. It was the hardest 6 weeks of my life. The DTs, or detoxification process, that was happening had me crawling to the bathroom on my elbows at times because I didn't have the energy, and my body was like creating all of this pain so that it would get its fix. And again, I just turned to breath. And if I did not have the breath, I know for a fact I would have died from the massive spike of decreased serotonin, decreased dopamine, and everything that happens when people are on these drugs and they just fall right off and stop cold turkey. It would have killed me. So thankfully I made it through that. And then I had that spiritual awakening. That was when everything came to life, and I recognized, oh, I didn't heal myself because of the breath work and everything else. I healed myself because of this and because of this. I kept on moving. I would do the 3D things like breathing and stretching and everything else. But I was here. I was living in this. I wasn't living in this. I was focused on what I want and creating. And that finally landed. And that's when I really dug in to neuroscience and psychology. I've been studying that for a better part of a decade now.
Wow.
Also went through yoga training. I'm a 500-hour teacher trainer. I can make teachers, yoga teachers as well, create yoga teachers and train them. a heart math certified trainer. We're also partnered with Heart Math and all these other expressions. And now, of course, a forthcoming double doctorate in neurochemistry and neuropsychology, taking the ancient breath techniques that I've been studying for well over 20 years and mixing evidence-based science to create the Welcome Home method.
That's fascinating. Wow, what an outcome going through all that contrast, which we all do, all
Yeah.
this darkness. We got to go through some of that.
Yeah.
And then now to what person you have become is just incredible, inspiring. And let me ask you about a willful warrior.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And is that a brand? Is that a program? Please elaborate.
Yeah. So the Willful Warrior was started last year. It is a breath facilitation company and courses. We operate mainly virtually, but we also have some live events. We actually just did one in Connecticut inside of this, what's called an energy enhancement system. So you've been to a Dr. Joe event, or you at least
Yes.
have okay, yeah. So that energy, that buzz that you're feeling, that's scalar energy. That's what you've created whenever you meditate and you're around all those other people. So we did a breath shamanic set for the Willful Warrior in Connecticut this like 2 weekends ago. Absolutely incredible, because you're in that energy and you're doing the breath work. So we have live events, but it is centered around the courses that we have. There's a course we have called the Healing Breathwork Fundamentals. I actually just before this recorded our 4th week. It's a 5-week course where we dig in and I show you scientifically how I did what I did and how you can do the same thing. And now we have hundreds and hundreds, now thousands of people practicing the breath in 31 countries. And we have messages from MS patients who have turned off their disease and stopped the progression of their MS. Some of them have actually, my girlfriend has MS, and she has actually remyelinated or healed those lesions that they say can never be healed. We have type 1 diabetics that are doing away with their neuropathy, paralyzed folks themselves like me that are starting to feel things again. One of the people in Connecticut, Joe, motorcycle accident, paralyzed from the neck down. He says he's feeling pressure in his back and pain in certain areas in his lower body now. And he hasn't felt that in fucking forever. So yeah, it's just amazing to be able to teach this now to other people. And that's my main focus.
That's incredible. That's incredible. No, I listened to this Saturday, actually. I was in the Zoom call. It's very powerful. It's a bit different. And it is also inspired by Dr. Joe's materials.
Yes, yeah. So in fact, to that point, you know, he's all of our mentors. But there was a time that I've been to 6 of his events. I got to volunteer for him in Niagara Falls.
Oh,
So I'm there. And of course, you get small moments with him where you're all eating or whatever, and you get little bits of talking to him or whatever. But there was one substantial moment that as I was passing him, it was just as simple as him saying, like he says at the end of his retreats, you've heard him, I'm only one person. I need you out there making these changes. So in that way, he just looked at me. He's like, I love having you at these, but when are you adding your magic to the universe? And that was it. It was like the boot in the butt, the flame under the cheese to get me moving. And we are now 10 months old. So we're less than a year old, and it was because of Dr. Joe's influence that the Willful Warrior was created. And it's amazing if any of you listening do his meditations. We are like peanut butter and jelly. If you do my breath work and then his meditation, welcome home. You're like, you're seriously going to go somewhere.
so it has a little bit of different touch, or is it similar, or?
It's very different, actually. The only similarity inside of it is our basic message of pick the life you want to live. The means of getting there is different because, of course, we're concentrating on breath work, which is consciously moving into the one system that you can control, your breath. And then meditation is dissolving ego, dissolving self into the moment. So we're very different in that school. And our courses are very different. There are some similarities in areas where we cross, of course. But all of this is based on creating and activating over 1,400 different chemicals in the body through your breath work, creating new proteins, activating genetic expression, and then there's the meditative pieces. So he's inspired, or I'm inspired by him. You can tell when you listen to my breathwork stuff that I have been inspired by him.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Now, this podcast is focused on peace, and you as a veteran,
Yeah.
as somebody that healed yourself, and as somebody that turned into a doctor now, and learning so, you're just academic and really studying all of these sciences, and now you are just called to share this your unique knowledge and the meditation, and calling Willful Warrior. Why do I call it Willful Warrior? What does that mean to you?
That's a great question. Yeah. So whenever you think of a warrior, what we think is all of these war movies, and you watch, all
Yes.
everything that we've seen is what we look at as a warrior. Well, I am a student of history as well as neuroscience and psychology, and my favorite culture and warriors to study are the samurai. And when you look at the samurai, they truly embody what a warrior is. And a warrior is filled with service. When you look at samurai itself, the word samurai means to serve. It's quite literally the same thing as karma. Both mean to serve. So when you look at the samurai, over 90% of their life wasn't even spent in battle, fighting with a sword or a bow and arrow or doing anything else. It was spent in mastery, mastery of self, mastery of peace in the moment, joy in the moment, and being one with everything around you. 90 to 95% of their life they spent breathing, meditating, chanting, singing, eating and farming with their family and their friends and their villages, crafting, you name it. They were just constant poetry. They found peace in poetry. They found peace in hours and hours of meditation. Self mastery is what a warrior is all about, because in those moments when the emperor called them to war, where they had to protect their loved ones, of course, they were the most epic precision tool inside of that arena of battle, because they had mastered themselves in every direction. They had mastered their mind. They had mastered the physicality. They'd mastered their heart. They'd mastered compassion. In that way, even when you look in history, in their battles, they were compassionate to their enemies. Even though they were fighting, they still had compassion at a certain point when, let's say, the battle was lost for their enemy. They wouldn't kill each and every one of them. They would actually stop at that moment and give that enemy the chance based on their culture. If they were Japanese, they were given the chance to perform sobaku on themselves, to honor out on their own. And it's just beautiful when you look at it in that way, because that's the way I look at being a warrior. It's not about fighting. It's not about, being the best shot or knowing how to drop bombs or anything else. It's all about self-mastery and service. And the only way to do that is to be willful about every intention and every action that you take. So Willful Warrior is my personal modern description of the samurai inside of all of us.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, it reminded me of that movie, Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
It was about
Last Samurai.
The Last Samurai. It was fascinating just watching that and just seeing that culture, the discipline, and the peace, the loyalty, and it was fascinating. It's just looking at that. And now, speaking of peace, what does peace mean to you personally?
Yeah. So as with anything, it all starts within. We're always in this society and this modern day and age focused on external senses and what it means outside of yourself and what it looks like, right? And people can describe what peace looks like, but I truly feel that peace has to be more of a feeling. And you have to feel that internally and radiate that to yourself first. And then once you feel that love, compassion, understanding, and space, now you have that peace wrapped inside of your heart, and you radiating that to yourself allows you to also share that with the entire world. That's what I look at as peace. That's what peace means to me.
Why there's no peace between us human? What's your intake about that?
Yeah, because we're at war with ourselves. Think about it. Think about how many times, even I admit this, right? Think about how many times in just one day I think about something I want to do, and then I verbalize and orate and create all these stories around why it's not going to happen, why it's probably going to go smash, why it's going to disappear. We're at constant war with ourselves in a world where we're fed distraction and misinformation and all of these other things, because when you lead by fear, you can now control a population. So in that way, you kind of release yourself from what's happening in society, the more you can find that peace within yourself. And I think that's why we have so much conflict right now. There's so much conflict because you're at war within yourself. So it makes it easy to look at your neighbor or the country across the border from you, point out all the differences, point out all the ways that they're failing because you see it in yourself, and it's a self-reflective universe. So if I'm looking across the border, I don't care where it is. Just like in that way, Yugoslavia looked across the border to Kosovo and saw them as inferior. That's because they felt inferior. So that's why we have this lack of peace, or what looks like a lack of peace on this planet right now. We're at war with ourselves. And the moment that we can actually stop warring within, we'll stop projecting all of our hate and all of these things that we think somebody else is causing, but it's actually us.
And we look at the human history as we know to now, this topic of war and conflict has been going on as we understand it. And why do you think so? I mean, you answered it, but I want to ask you again from a different angle, and want to see if you have a different response to that. Why, since the beginning history to now,
Yeah.
have we always been like that? Are we always going to be like this?
I don't think we have. And I mean, you have so many texts that are out there, from the Quran to the Bible to the Ball, all of these different books that speak of a paradise on earth as if it already existed, whether it's metaphorical or, whatever else. It all talks about that. Every cultural writing that we can read about ancient cultures, you read about them gathering in circles and breathing and singing and tribal things happening. So there was, at a point in time, peace inside of our society. There had to have been. It only makes sense, right? Think about the way that these older cultures were, that they would take time out of their day and time out of their week to talk to their neighbor, to spend time outside of the distractions we now enjoy today, and actually experience real life itself. So when you look at a lot of what's happened over society's history, I give religion a big part of it, of course, the institution of religion. And I'm not downing on anyone's religion itself. I'm just saying religion and spirituality, two totally different things. Religion is an institution. Religion itself is the control. And in that way, when we look at ourselves and we see all the things we're lacking, it's so easy to look over at your neighbor and point that same thing out in them. And I think that's what happens in so many religions, because they all feel like they're different, they're the right one, but they're all saying the same thing. If you read the Quran, you read the Bible, you read all of the ancient texts to whatever religion you believe in, they all say the same thing. But then you look across the way and say, well, he can't be a good person. He is the infidel because he is a Christian, or he is a barbarian because he is a member of Islam. There's no way he can love God. But you're both saying the exact same thing in a different language, in a different way. Amen. So in that way, I look at religion being one of the biggest banes and boils on the butt of the human race, because it has just since been a modicum of control that is wielded by fear, and that hate that we feel now, the things that we see going on right now, rooted in religion, rooted in cultural difference, and rooted in what you did wrong, even though I'm doing the same things right across the border.
Wow, well said. What I love that you kind of touched on, I never heard from anybody saying that, that probably there was peace in the beginning. Yeah. Are you referring to that whole concept of the Garden of Eve, or?
Yeah. So the Garden of Eden is one of the representations, right? And then if you go even before the Bible's description, before the Quran's description of, paradise, there are all of the Upanishads, the Tao, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, 7, 8, 9, some said to be 20,000 years old. And these are the scrolls that we've gotten all of our breath information from. That's where all of this came from, is these tribal works that they had put together thousands and thousands of years ago. And they speak constantly of the Sabbath actually being the seventh day that they all rest and come together, not to down on anyone's religion again, not to thank God for the things that we have, but to thank each other for the God in each and every one of us. And that's literally what they talk about, is no matter what you call God, no matter what you view as God or the universe, we're all part of that. And even in Christianity or any other religion that is out there, we are created in the image of the Lord. So if that's the case, these ancient philosophies and, documents that we have that are even older than the Bible by thousands and thousands of years, they all say the same thing. They all say the same thing. We are one. We are multiple individual, self-reflective expressions of God, universe, source, energy, whatever it is. And we're here in this human experience. And in that way, the older cultures knew this and they tapped into it, and they would join together and breathe together and ceremony together. And it was this amazing, that's where these tribal writings come from, is in these tribal accounts. It was just such a peaceful society. Yeah, there was war. Same thing with the American Indians. Even if you just go back 2,000 years ago, they are an agrarian society, right? And yes, they had battles, they had wars, but for 2,000 years, they were at peace before we came over here. They had tribe and family, and they loved the earth, and they practiced the things that they've talked about in all of these ancient writings over and over and over again. So, I mean, it's not far into the past when you look at these histories and realize peace was here. We had a huge, huge amount of peace, whether it's in just certain regions or across the entire world at some point in time. We lived in peace, and it's possible to do it again. You see it all over the world. I see so many different religions and cultures and colors and creeds coming together. It's absolutely amazing.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, from the schooling background, that the history that we thought that taught us, seems there's new documentaries and new, evidences comes that we are having longer history than 10,000. We might even have hundreds of thousands of histories.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
there are evidences keep coming out, and people are starting learning more on that. Now, speaking of global peace, is there a way that we can have global peace, and how is that?
Yeah, think about it like this. Imagine if we had everyone on the planet for 5 minutes do a Dr. Joe meditation.
We wouldn't have peace, right?
Quite literally, hate, anger, depression, sadness would disappear for 5 minutes on the entire planet, right? Could you imagine the level of that energy if we could get all 9 billion people to just breathe for 5 minutes and meditate at once? Holy Lord. And to your point, they even now just recently released a study called the Spain model, and SPANE. They took 25,000 people and they measured the electromagnetic field that we create. And what they did was they went through and very, very specifically put people into feelings of anger and got them to feel shame, got them to feel depression and sadness. Then they got them to feel happiness. They got them to feel joy, elation, all of these amazing feelings. And they measured the actual frequency that we are expending from our body. We are actually emanating. And they found that authenticity was at the very top. And guess what peace is based off of? Just authentically being in your heart and accepting of those that are around you, because you recognize them as yourself. And whenever you think of it in that way, when you go based on the Spain model, one person vibrating at that highest frequency can quite literally overdo or wave cancel out over 50 million people stuck in shame and anger. That's how profound one person's impact can be on the entire world. And that's what this research study found. I'm excited to dive in even further, because part of what we do is research to even take that further and discover that even more. So again, on Saturday, when we joined together, I think there were 100 of us. So you can imagine 100 people buzzing at that authenticity. 100 people can affect over what, 100 times 50 million. I mean, my Lord, that means we had the capability to express coherence, peace, and this energy through 5 billion people on the planet on Saturday, just with 100 people. So you can imagine the more we bring to the party, how that's going to exponentially grow.
So the way to get to global peace, what I'm hearing from you, doing these meditation, breathwork exercises is the way, in your opinion.
Yeah, it's the only way out is in. It really is. We're always focused on these external, what can I do? What can I eat? What can I take? It's all here. It's all within. And the more that we all focus on that, and I see it with hundreds and now thousands of us joining together to do breath and meditation stuff across the world, you feel it. You really do. You tune in to that love that somebody else is expressing somewhere else, because you are too.
Well, when you telling me in so many ways, I can acknowledge that. Now, let me ask you a challenging question here.
Mm-hmm.
What about somebody in Palestine that, you know, all of his family members or her family members or his house is all is in just chaos? You know, family member had died. Would you recommend the same thing? Just come on and let's just meditate together?
In a different way, yes, because of course that person right now needs a little bit of love and compassion, a little bit of understanding that you took a big bite in that doo-doo sandwich, and what you're experiencing right now is not okay. What you're feeling is normal. What you're feeling is authentic, and it's welcome. You're allowed to feel indignant right now. You are allowed to feel angry. You are allowed to feel sad and despondent. So in that way, yes, but of course there's a different approach when you're dealing. It's the same way when I deal with these veterans that come back from war. I can't just tell them, hey, we're going to breathe, we're going to meditate, you're just not good enough, try harder type of stuff, right? I can't say that to them. I've got to walk them through the understanding of what you feel right now is okay. It's understandable, it's okay, and it's welcome. And the moment it can kind of express that to each other, the more it's easier to relate that to somebody going through that. And then you can, in that way as well, do what you can to compassionately help them with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? The basic foods and shelter and whatever you can do to help shift that person, even if it's just telling them that you understand, and not that you're sorry for what they're dealing with, but that you're sending them love and you're sending them compassion, because you can't even imagine what they're going through right now. And in that way, just being able to see somebody and feel them like that, you watch people kind of let down their guard a little bit. You know, they'll soften just a little bit because they understand, okay, this guy gets me. Yeah, I'm pissed right now. My life sucks. I'm going to be a little angry, and it's okay.
Well, you personally went through some massive chaos and you were like paralyzed from, you know, from neck to toe, and then you sheltered through breathing. And somebody like you saying that is very respectful. And to my understanding, I can definitely relate in so many ways. For me, love is the path. You know, unconditional love is the path. And these exercises, these spiritual exercises that you are introducing, is a way to connect to that vibration. And you know, today in the morning I did a 1 hour meditation myself that set my whole day. I'm more of a peaceful state, and people, when we have more people that connect now, whatever it is. Some people might be prayer, some people be different type of spiritual exercises, but when they connect to that higher self that is made of love and light, is what we're going to generate a more peaceful. I can definitely see what you're trying to say.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, imagine it this way, right? And we'll use Israel and Palestine as an example. What if all of them on the front lines, just on the front lines, those in the Gaza Strip, whether military or just innocent people, what if all of them took just a moment and for 10 minutes breathed, meditated, got into their heart, and then carried out where they are now to what they want to do next? I think, and I know in my heart, that what would happen next would be a step towards more peaceful and loving way of being. Of course, maybe it doesn't end hostilities right away, but at least in that way, maybe it allows whoever's on the front line to think, maybe I should stop shelling for the moment. And then whoever's on the other side to, you know, let go of some of that revenge and indignation that they rightly feel. And then think about that. I mean, if just in 10 minutes, if everybody on the front lines, it's the same thing, Ukraine and Russia. What if for 10 minutes, everybody on that line just breathed and meditated, took just a quick minute to get into their heart? Imagine what would happen the days following.
Oh, I'm sure that a lot of intuitive guidance will, they start listening to that intuition part
Right.
of themselves. And
Right. Imagine you being a soldier, right? Like you're a Russian soldier and you're in Ukraine and you're about to do something to destroy a building, but then all of you take 10 minutes to breathe and meditate and you come back out of it. You're probably going to be conflicted about what you're about to go do because you're thinking to yourself, I don't know, that really doesn't feel good.
So what would you say? I'm going to ask more of a quite challenging question here. What would you say if somebody doesn't even believe in meditation? I mean, like when some people that want to hear about it, obviously I have a community of people that are really pro meditation, but the people who are not, some people just naturally, they're doing okay. They are good, productive people, and they don't even believe this kind of concept. The whole world not going to come with this.
Sure.
And then giving that kind of advice, hey, in order to get to global peace, we got to meditate. Will people, get on board with that?
Yeah. See, and that's where we come in at the Willful Warrior, because with what I offer, it's simply breath. It's really just controlling your breath. I have something called 60 seconds to freedom, quite literally a minute technique that I can take somebody through and allow them to feel that expression, even in just a small moment. And the way I look at it is I'm the gateway drug for meditation, because meditation wouldn't be taught by the masters of old. When you read these old scrolls, you wouldn't be taught meditation. You wouldn't be taught these advanced techniques. Meditation's advanced. It's tough. Anybody that's tried knows, man, that mind holds on for 5 to 25 minutes. So the first like half of my meditation is just, all right, shut up, relax, shut up, relax. So in that way, that's where I get to be the gateway for them. Don't worry about meditation. Don't worry about any of the yoga terminology or any of the things. I'm just going to be the lay dude that will talk you through a 1-minute breathing expression just to let you feel it for yourself. And based on my story and what other people have experienced, hopefully you find something for yourself. And I've noticed that is the most disarming thing for anybody that has that wall up. I mean, trust me, I work with veterans. You try to get them into meditation, especially Dr. Joe, try to get them into a yoga class. If I walked into a room filled of Marines and said, we're going to meditate and open our heart chakras, they'd all want to rush the room and like jack me in the face. Because what the hell are you talking about, dude? They're not going to be open to that. So when I walk in and I let them know just a small bit of what I've been through, who I am, we're just going to try this breath real quick, 10 breaths, 1 minute. Let me see what you guys think. You watch all the shoulders in the room just drop right down, because whenever you, like you experienced, I may say some things. Whoop, there we go. I may say some things that are spiritual in nature, but you also hear me talking about what's happening in the body. So in that way, I'm very intentionally keeping you rooted in the 3D feeling, keeping you rooted in what you're feeling. So that way don't worry about it. We're not going to meditate. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to breathe. I just want you to feel the difference in your body. And same thing. Once somebody gets that expression, once they get that one hit, hooked.
Absolutely. That's how I got hooked. Now, my last question to you, Leland, is do you think humanity will ever get to a point that everlasting global peace is part of our reality?
Oh, buzz went through my body. I love this question. Yes, emphatically, yes, 1000% yes. I feel like we are in the Great Awakening right now. I feel and have experienced millions and millions of people who are in the self-development space, who practice Dr. Joe, who practice some sort of breath work, who practice some sort of mindfulness technique, and we're growing and growing and growing and growing. And I think the reason that we see such a tumultuous world right now is because before any great animal dies, it is its most dangerous, it is its most loud, it is the most tumultuous time, say for a lion. Don't go anywhere near one. If it's his last few hours or last few days, he is loud, he is mean, he is angry, he is ripping crap apart. And I think that's what's happening in the world. And that's what we're seeing is the old ways have finally come to the surface. And we're noticing that we're to blame, not our neighbor, that we're to blame, not the other person in the other country, that it's with us that we have to have this come to Jesus type moment and have those tough conversations that we haven't had in so long. And the more that this continues to happen, we are, by that model, the Spain model, and the research that they've done, we're elevating consciousness. We really are. HeartMath also has those gasometers all over the world where they're measuring through these devices the elevation of energy that happens during Walk for the World, during Breathe for World Peace. And they are noticing an alarming rise in energy inside of collective consciousness. So yeah, I think we're right on the verge. This is the Great Awakening, and I'm honored to help usher that in.
Wow, fascinating. Ladies and gentlemen, this was Leland Holgate. If people want to find you, how can people find you and learn more about your materials?
Yeah, so you have our website, which is thewillfulwarrior.org. We also have a really amazing support group that's based on WhatsApp. And if you go to www.willfulwarrior.community, then you can jump in with us. And these folks are amazing. Every 30 minutes, they're practicing that 60 seconds to freedom. So it gives you a chance in the day. Maybe your boss said something and you just want to pop them in the face. Go in the room, breathe for a minute and blow that off. And that's a way for anybody to find us and even ask the hundreds that we have in that group their experience, and they'll definitely walk them home.
I'll make sure definitely put those links below on this the description on my video YouTube. It was an honor. I was fascinated. Now I can totally see why I was so called to do a podcast with you. Your story is so unique and so inspiring. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an amazing time. And thank you for doing what you're doing. You're shedding some light on things and at least having tough conversations. So appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.